Bro, what are you doing? You ready to go see us? I already got the tickets and seats reserved.
Oh yeah, I'm ready. Let's go. What is up, everybody? Random Man here, bringing you my review for Us. By the way, I will be giving details on a giveaway contest I will be holding at the end of this video, so you may skip to the indicated time frame to find out more. Now, the plot of the psychological horror film Us basically follows a family of four named the Wilsons, who head up to their beach house one summer in the present day, only to later get confronted by a group of their doppelgangers. Going into this movie, I was actually really excited to see it. I know what some of you are thinking. Alan, for future reference, that is my real name. Alan, how could you have been excited to see a horror film? Isn't horror your least favorite genre of movies? Well, yes, you got me there, but Us became one of my most anticipated movies of 2019 for one reason. Jordan Peele. This is the latest film of his, written, produced, and directed by him. His previous directorial effort, which was his directorial debut, was 2017's Get Out. One of the most surprising movies I've ever seen and reviewed on this channel. This became one of my favorite movies of that year, 2017. It really surprised me of how much it worked as a comedy horror thriller hybrid, it having a bunch of social commentary within it, and it even won Jordan Peele the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay, and he was also nominated for Best Director and Best Picture for this film. What an impressive feat to get that kind of recognition for your first directorial effort. So, with all of that being said, Get Out was a big reason why I was excited for Us, but also with the cast and it having a unique looking concept straight out of something that we would have seen from decades gone by in Hollywood. Lupita Nyong'o, Winston Duke, and some others do head up the cast, along with Jordan Peele being back behind the camera, writing, producing, and directing. All of that coupled with the really awesome trailer that we got on Christmas Day last year, I was pumped. Starting out with the cast and their performances, we have in the lead role of Adeline Wilson, Lupita Nyong'o. Academy Award winner Lupita Nyong'o, I should say, as earlier in the decade she did win the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress for her intense turn as Patsy in 12 Years a Slave. A well-deserved win for an intense film, and similarly to 12 Years a Slave, to use the word intense again, she gives another intense performance in Us. One that is of a lot of reserved emotion. Her character is suffering from PTSD from a past experience she had as a child. That is shown off in the opening scene of this film, which I'll mention a bit later. And there's quite a bit of badassery with the way Nyong'o portrays Adeline here. I think this is probably my new favorite performance of Nyong'o's. Even though, again, she did win the Oscar for 12 Years a Slave, I think that her portrayal of Adeline is another Oscar caliber performance that is favorable to another tour de force performance in a horror movie from last year, Toni Collette in Hereditary. Collette didn't land an Oscar nomination for that film, so I don't know how big Nyong'o's chances of her landing a nom for this film would be. We have a whole 9 months left of 2019 anyway, so there is quite a bit to be seen with more performances later on in the year, but I will say that Nyong'o does slay here. Also terrific is Nyong'o's Black Panther co-star, Winston Duke. You may remember him as M'Baku from Black Panther, but he also showed up as that same character in Avengers Infinity War. And what he does in portraying Adeline's husband, Gabe, he is basically a dorky dad, if you will, making a bunch of bad jokes here and there, providing a lot of the movie's comic relief, but we do see quite a bit with him, and the chemistry between himself and Nyong'o I thought was very believable. Then there's also the two young actors who play the children of Adeline and Gabe, those being Shahadi Wright Joseph and Evan Alex, playing the older daughter and younger son respectively. These two give us some of the better child performances I have seen in recent memory. They never came off as annoying or just too pristine for their own good. No, they were realistically played up as kids with their own kind of quirks. The daughter of the film is aspiring to be a track star, and the young son of the movie is playing around with this thing that he says is a magic trick. It contributes later on to the film, both of their characteristics there. But with them, I thought that they were superb in this movie. And also worth mentioning is Tim Heidecker and Elizabeth Moss as this couple who are friends with the Wilsons and are staying in a beach house across the lake from the Wilsons as well. I thought they were great additions to the movie too. But what is well worth mentioning, in addition to the strong performances here overall, is that all of these actors do portray the doubles of themselves in this film. So they are all giving two performances each, and for some actors that is quite a challenge to do. But all of their doppelgangers do have distinct personalities and bring out the yin and yang between them, and also just bringing on the scares with how they perform across the rest of the film. So while everyone does an outstanding job in this film performance-wise, I think it is Lupita Nyong'o who gives the greatest performance of all in Us. The writing in this film does bring us a concept that is as simple as what I mentioned earlier with the synopsis of the film, but what writer, producer, director Jordan Peele does with the script specifically is bring out a lot more of the thought-provoking craft that he brought us with his previous directorial debut here. The movie does begin with that aforementioned opening scene of Adeline when she is a young girl in the 1980s going to the Santa Cruz Boardwalk Carnival of sorts with her parents on vacation, and she experiences something that she has been holding inside of her into adulthood, which is when we do pick up in the present day with her married to Gabe and having her two kids already, and they are vacationing in the summer at their beach house. Again, what I just described to you is pretty simple at its core, but a lot of horror movies do stem off of a similar simple approach, and what they do in turn, as I feel is done exceptionally well here, is create a lot more of stuff to ponder about amidst all of the thrills and chills that are associated with the genre. And what Peele does with his writing does expand a lot more than what is initially perceived, just like with Get Out. What he does as a director as well is bring us a lot of focus, laser focus, with what to show on screen and to veer us in a specific state to where, yeah, we are feeling for these characters. And what this movie comes down to when the doppelgangers are introduced is it becoming a chase film where they're trying to outrun and outright kill their opponents. That right there also could have veered into predictable, conventional kind of territory, as that's one of the big things that does avert me away from the horror genre in the first place, as a lot of the ones that I do see follow kind of rudimentary approaches, and characters have to outrun the pursuers, there's a lot of blood. But what Peele inserts here, and I think contributes to him being such a skilled filmmaker, is knowing what to show and when to show it, and also keep us on our toes in both caring for these characters and also thinking about the bigger picture and what is really going on underneath the surface. Going back to some of the writing here too, given how Peele's past experience as a comedian was shown off in Get Out with how he executed that film, that does apply here with Us. As I mentioned, with Winston Duke's character bringing a lot of the comic relief here, I never thought it overstayed its welcome in the slightest. I think that the way comedy was used here was well-timed for the most part, and also just in the way it is used in horror. A lot of times when people are in some dire situations, sometimes you cannot feel but have some comic relief here and there to laugh you out of it and just give you some levity to really get through it all in the first place. And that is what I think is so especially fantastic about Peele's deft hand being able to balance all of that throughout the film. In that sense, too, I think Peele does improve on balancing the tonal shifts here compared to Get Out. And when the horror elements do come into play with this movie, they are put on full force here, as it's pretty clear that this is a more horror-centered film than Get Out was, given how that there are a lot of brutal kills in this movie, a lot more blood, a lot more violence, all of that. But like I said, Peele knows when to show what he wants to show and also leave it off screen to see more of the full effect in what we're supposed to get in thinking about this movie's deeper themes and messages and otherwise subliminal kind of visual cues that are littered all over this film. Like, wow, Peele has a big thing for wanting to do that across both movies he has directed thus far, and that is something for me as a viewer that I find so beneficial in me looking out for clues everywhere and will aid in rewatchability. Like, seriously, between us and last year's The Favorite, these movies have got me thinking about rabbits differently, and for me, that's a little bit unsettling as I used to own some pet rabbits here, and that just added on to the fear factor. And speaking of that, as I mentioned before, with me not gravitating to horror movies too much, it mainly also has to do with me not scaring that easily. It does take quite a bit to actually get me to fear what I am watching, but here, even though I wasn't scared while watching this movie, if a film does get me to cringe or wince at certain moments throughout, yeah, it was effective in that regard. And again, that does have to do with more of the violence, more of the actual intensity with the pace here. The pacing of this film was so well done. It runs at about 2 hours, and I never felt it skip a beat or drag for too long. Moving on to some of the technical merits of this film, this movie is so pristinely shot with its cinematography. There is quite a bit of use of color throughout this movie. One is obvious in the sense that the doppelgangers are all wearing red jumpsuits and holding scissors to make them easily identifiable. That in itself is pretty creepy in the way they look and just how they act in conjunction with our main characters on the run and trying to take down their doubles. But also with the way this movie is shot, the use of color stood out to me in some moments where the lighting was on a pretty notable display. There's this one shot of this film that is one of my favorites of the entire movie where Nyong'o and her character, she's holding a weapon going down an escalator with yellow lights in the background gleaming off of her beautiful face. I think Nyong'o's really, really attractive. One of the most beautiful people alive right now. The way this movie is strung together with its editing, like I said, with the pacing, it never rushed or dragged. Certain frames inserted and taken out of the film I thought were used to an effective degree. Then there's also the music for this film. The original score was composed by Michael Abels, who previously collaborated with Jordan Peele on Get Out. The score for that film I thought was well used in its execution, and this also applies with Us. A lot of strings are used to imitate some cuts that are used in the movie, and also just the feeling of dread throughout. If you saw the trailer for Us that was released on Christmas Day last year, then you would have heard Luna's I Got 5 on it, which is also remixed for use of this movie with Michael Abels' score here. I thought that was effective in both the original and remix's use in Us. If you couldn't already tell by now, I love this movie. It's pretty clear that I've given this movie quite a bit of praise throughout this review, and really the only issue I would say I have with this film does have to do with some of the ambiguity and directness overall it has. By the end of the movie, there is quite a bit revealed in the end of what is really going on across the narrative, and while there is quite a bit that is shown and given to us, the viewer, to really go, aha, or if you were paying attention the whole time, you can pretty much see where the movie is going, but in a good way here. I mean, I personally noticed what was really going on in between 2/3 to 3/4 of the way into the film. But at the same time, too, though, there are some things that aren't addressed or answered by the end of the movie, probably done on purpose on Peele's part to get us to rewatch it and discover more details for ourselves with the movie. And that did certainly apply when I rewatched Get Out when I bought it on Blu-ray, and I did notice more things here and there, and they enhanced the experience for me. So maybe it has to do with that and me not catching some things the first time around. I think it's more of a case of what scares us in the first place, and that is something that is so subjective across the horror genre, and we all have different fears in the first place. So that is gonna vary from person to person. It's something I definitely took into account after I watched Hereditary last year. I already compared this movie favorably to Us in how Colette and Nyong'o both give amazingly performances across both films. And with the case of Hereditary's own ending, I personally wished it was more ambiguous, because what is left to be unseen in that narrative I would have found more scary, as there were supernatural elements there, and that kind of took me out of it to where, yeah, I know that stuff isn't real. And with Us being so grounded in reality as well, it didn't bother me that much, because I knew Peele's intention, and what he did was make it feel like an elongated Twilight Zone kind of episode, but in the best kind of execution, in my opinion. And that's probably why I gravitated more towards his interpretation of horror. And how fitting is it that Peele is going to be hosting the upcoming new incarnation of the Twilight Zone series, as, yeah, what he is doing for the horror genre is something that both Alfred Hitchcock and M. Night Shyamalan have done early on in their careers. We certainly do have to wait and see where Peele's career does transpire in the near future before we call him a horror master. But for now, I do think he is contributing some great service to that genre of film. I would like to see him venture out into different genres of film in the near future, but whatever Peele does, I will be looking forward to seeing it, and I think he is 2 for 2 with both Get Out and Us. And speaking of Get Out for the umpteenth time, I don't think one should go into this movie expecting the next Get Out or a movie just like Get Out, as these two films could not be more different from one another. And I saw this film with a good friend of mine, Winston, who you may remember me talking about and showing off in previous reviews. He's actually the guy who convinced me to see Get Out with him in theaters 2 years ago, and I could not thank him more enough. And I certainly had a great time watching this movie with you, Winston. Shout out to you for that. But why did I bring up Winston in the first place in comparing Get Out to Us? Well, to quote him specifically, you may want to get out of the theater if you do expect Us to be like Get Out, as Us definitely veers more towards traditional horror than the hybrid of genres that Get Out was using. So really, I'm interested to see what other people do think of this movie. For me personally, though, again, I loved Us. This right now is in early contention to be one of my favorite movies of 2019 thus far. Again, too, we have a whole 9 months left to go, but I think that this is such a fantastic film. I highly recommend it. My final verdict for Us is 4.5 out of 5 stars. Alright, so you've either watched the entirety of this review or you just skipped to the end because you like free stuff, and who doesn't, as in anticipation for Avengers Endgame, now coming out in about a month from now. Wow, it's coming closer and closer already. I will be giving away a digital copy code for Avengers Infinity War. Yes, the highest grossing film of last year, worldwide specifically. The highest grossing film domestically here in the US was fellow MCU entry Black Panther, and I personally loved Avengers Infinity War. This was an honorable mention for one of my favorite movies of 2018 last year, and I also had to shout it out specifically for giving me one of my favorite movie-going experiences I've ever had. If you've seen or participated in any one of my past giveaway contests, then these following rules should seem familiar. Rule number 1, you must be subscribed to this channel prior to March 30th. I don't care if you subscribed to me yesterday or you've been subscribed for years now, you must be subscribed prior to that date. Rule number 2, like this video. Simple as that. And rule number 3, comment that you want to be entered into this contest and how you would like me to send you the code if you are the winner. I will be randomly selecting a winner for this digital copy code at the end of my review for Dumbo. Good luck to every one of you that enters. Thank you all, as always, for watching. Be sure to like this video, comment on what you thought of us. Social media links in the description. Subscribe to my channel for more, and I'll catch you on the next movie review.